And we'd love just to hear from you guys, any comments or questions or interactions, because I'm sure we've got loads to learn from you too.
I see our friend Anne there. Thank you.
Oh yeah, Anne.
Okay.
Right.
So back to you, Ivana.
Well, not really me. I mean, I absolutely love what you shared. It's been absolutely fantastic. And oh gosh, I could have 1,001 examples. But I would love to hear from everybody else, and if they've got any questions or any kind of, what you're hearing, and ask away or share. And don't be shy. Anne, hi, Anne.
Any good stories?
Hello, hi. My experience is really having worked about 30 years in corporate life rather than in education sector. But I chuckle a bit really, because we actually used to have a training program for managers on how to handle difficult conversations. So it was completely outside in. So managers in a way were then expecting to have difficult conversations. And the sort of difficult conversations they would have in corporate life would be things like someone telling someone their job was going, in terms of redundancy. And that's what we would call difficult conversations. And for some people, of course, they were actually delighted that the job was going, and they were going to get redundancy payoff. So actually it wasn't difficult for some people, but it was also related to working relationships, where there might be some strained working relationships. But it just makes me laugh, because the fact that we actually had a training program called How to Handle a Difficult Conversation. So the whole thing's already set up in people's heads that is going to be difficult. And what I know now, having spent 6 months training with Liz and Stu, is that, it's in our heads. And not to put that veneer on, and people are different, and what someone thinks might be difficult may not at all be difficult, might be just what they want to hear. So yeah, I find it really interesting.
Thank you, Anne. It's great to hear, isn't it? And it's ironic, isn't it, that organisations would spend so much money on creating a programme to handle difficult conversations. So my experience isn't far from that either, with 30 years in working in the police, and in a leadership position where we would have to navigate at some of these executive meetings. We'd have to navigate through all of our egos in order to try to get some sort of understanding of the next steps in whatever we were doing. And I sort of look back and think of the number of so-called difficult conversations that were taking place, and that, what a waste, but how the people involved in these so-called difficult conversations could have a much easier life by just knowing what we know.
Definitely. And also the question for me now, Stu, is difficult for who? The person delivering the message, or the person on the receiving end? And often it's the person delivering the message who thinks it's going to be difficult.
Oh, it is. My head teacher, Tom, the poor guy was, he was just fretting. To the point of virtual paralysis, that he's going to have to do the deed, and there was nothing like that.
And there's something else we just commented on today, and we'd heard Dr. Keith Blevins say it some time ago, but we were reminded of it today. One of our clients reminded us that we'd told them this, and said, oh yeah, that's a good thing. And what he said is, people can handle the truth.
Yeah.
It's like, sometimes what we do is we go in thinking it's going to be difficult, thinking they're going to respond a different way, having all that interference in the system. And the bit that we forget is that people might not like the truth, but they can handle the truth.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that I think is really worth kind of remembering as well.
Yeah. And I would say, like, definitely. Yeah.
No, carry on, Anne. Oh, she's gone.
I just going to say, I find that definitely, because, you know, even if you're going through big organizational change programs, if you don't speak the truth and communicate, the grapevine works really well, and that can often generate an awful lot of fear in people's heads. So you're right, Liz, it's much better to tell people how it is in a sensitive way, but not to be blagging, because people will make it up if it doesn't sound true.
Yeah, absolutely, Anne. Thank you. So, anyone else? Anyone about to have a difficult conversation? So it's Natalie. Hi, Natalie.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to share that I really love the formula you shared of a conversation plus interference is the difficult conversation. I just think it's really, really simple, and I just echo. I've had the whole corporate difficult conversations, and yeah, they get labelled difficult so much. But I guess what I'm noticing is also that journey of transitioning from being a coach where you actually almost collude with the content with these how-to strategies, and now you know, just pointing back to the understanding, because that's not your role in the how-to. And I just, interestingly, when you were describing the scratchy moment that occurs when people are wanting their how-to, how in my head I've already just thought difficult. So just noticing some interference that's cropped up for me of how I'd handle that.
In the training today, we had two people. They definitely had a scratchy moment, and there's one guy. They're lovely people, and he was saying, he said, "Look, I'm really disappointed." He said, "I thought," he said, "I like this stuff." He said, "But I thought we were going to get some sort of strategies about how we were going to be dealing with things so that I could take them away and share them with my staff." And I mean, Liz was standing up at the time, and she was great. She just sort of and just spoke just so beautifully back to him, which is, well, you know, we don't do that, and there are no strategies. This is just an understanding of how we operate, and that's what we're sharing with you. What you do, it's up to you. And you could see this chap. He was quite frustrated, but he turned in the afternoon. He was like putty.
I don't know.
Oh, wonderful.
Anyway.
Play-Doh.
Well done.
And the other thing I want, because it's really great, Natalie, that you raise it, because hey, me too. You know, sometimes I'm in trainings and people ask, I'm a participant, and somebody asks the question of the trainer. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm so glad that's not me at the front of the room. Like, what would happen? And I kind of start to build up this scenario of how that would be the beginning of the end of my career if I. You know, we all do that. So but what you've just pointed out there is you just recognize that occurring, and that's the magical bit. That's the bit that's magic. And the other, which it just makes me smile as well, and Stu touched on this. And when we work, particularly in education, the thing that we've got going for us is that the teachers that we work with are so intuitive with children. Like today she said, oh, you know, this lad came in and he was really upset, and she works with younger children, and she said I knew like what I was supposed to do with him. I can't remember what it was, but she sort of listed off. She said, but I knew that was, she said, so what we did is we talked about Greek gods. She, you know, like this random thing that she came up with, and they had this conversation about Greek gods. We engaged him. Now, and it was a really lovely teaching moment, because I kind of said to her, look, you know, it's not the Greek gods that made the difference. Is that in that moment you trusted your intuition and knew what it was that would connect with that child.
Yeah. Because
Greek gods won't work with a child. Otherwise, we could just write a Greek god strategy manual for how to deal with difficult children. Just talk to them about Greek gods, and you've sorted it. And we've actually got, it's quite useful for us, because when we point them back to how they actually interact with children, they go, oh yeah, we would never think about doing that with a child, and yet we do that with an adult. Isn't that interesting? So that kind of curious, slightly confused space, like that maybe the way they thought things worked isn't the way it actually works. So yeah, that's kind of what we're playing with in the room.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalie.
Thanks.
Any other questions, guys?
Any other?
We asked them the same.
I can tell you about a. I can tell you about one of the most beautiful projects that we've got on the go, and it's. I've been working with a head teacher who he resigned his previous school because he was so disillusioned with the way that they perceived the education of the children would take place, and he's fallen on his feet, and he knows that, and he's got a project which is to build and grow a brand new school. And I went to visit the school. They're in temporary accommodation at the moment. They've got 16 children aged between 4 and 5 in a community hall, and that's their school until they move into the new school next April. And they're going to grow it year on year. So these 4 and 5-year-olds, they'll be rattling around this huge school because its capacity is going to be up to 420 children. So in 6 years, or however long, 6 years, that school will be working at capacity. And at the moment, he's got 1 full-time teacher and 2 teaching assistants. And Liz is coaching the other teacher. I'm coaching the head teacher. And we had them both last night. So we sat down and worked with them. And they just want to, they actually see that they're operating from their place of well-being in this current project. And the fact that they see that, that's going to grow obviously year on year, and they want us to actually be working with them as they take on new staff and grow the school. And whenever I mention this to other teachers, they just go glassy-eyed, because it's like that's the dream, isn't it? To build something from nothing and create something that you really sort of put your mark on it, and the legacy lives on. So they're great people. We love them, and it's just such a beautiful project, Liz.
Yeah, and for us, what's really heartening is that they see that, well, we call it well-being. That just happens to be the word that works for us as we bridge that gap. And they see that well-being is going to be the heart, what is the compost that they're going to grow their school in. And I love that. I just love that. So for me, it's very heartening.
They want to identify themselves as a well-being school, where well-being is at the heart of everything. So there we go. Okay.
That sounds amazing. Wow, I say, wow. I was just wondering, I think it's been absolutely amazing sort of to hear what you shared, and you know, having such a different perspective, looking at challenging conversations, and do they really exist or not, and having different perspective, how they can kind of dissipate or disappear almost, and just become a conversation. And I think it's so hugely helpful, I think, to everybody when they start to realize that. I would love to see if there's anybody kind of has any more questions or anything else that you go, Denise, please.
Hi guys.
Hi, Denise. Hi,
Yeah,
Denise.
I just want to say thank you. I've really enjoyed it. I really just sat back and listened to, the person that came to mind was kind of how Kathy Casey just takes things back to its simplest form. And I think you guys just did the same. And it was like, what is it? What is it we're talking about? And then what is that to you guys? And then seeing the differences. And then what's really going on? And it was so simple. And yet I think really, very, very powerful in that. And that's what Sid said all the time. It is very simple. And that profound simplicity, I think, is sometimes the, tricky little sucker. And I just think you did a wonderful job, guys, of just taking us through kind of a step-by-step what occurs to you and how it occurs to you to speak to teach to leaders in the field of education. And it really resonates with me, working in the field of sport. It's the same type of thing, isn't it? We're trying to get people that can influence others, and I thought it was a really, really good job. And I love the thing that kind of struck me was, and it was something that I heard today, actually. I was listening to George Pransky, and he was talking about the operating principles are different when you cross the line. And that's what I heard in what you were saying, is that you used to come with a whole heap of strategies and techniques and tools and methodologies to solve the content of the problem. And you would come with all of that. That would be the operating principles. Whereas when you cross the line, what I heard in what you were saying, and it's the same as what I heard today, and it was great, 'cause it's like twice in one day, And it was, well, no, if you look at it from what's really going on, the entire operating principles are different. It's so different. And it was great, and to see the impact of what it is you're pointing people to, what it is we're all pointing people to, in terms of how it is we then get into challenge, get into resolving differences. The operating principles are just so different, and I just love that, what you've just said. It was brilliant. Thank you.
And the thing for me is this realization now that we know that the solution or the answer doesn't lie in trying to pick apart the problem. We know that, and it just makes the job as coaches so much easier.
And that's not being disrespectful to what people have been through.
No.
We're not saying that at all. We know that and you know that, Denise, I get that, but we know that the answer does not lie in the myriad of stuff that they're thinking. It doesn't lie there in their story. The answer lies in them getting back in touch with who they truly are. And we'll that slippery little sucker, like you say, is like, just keep pointing to it until they lose sight of the finger and they start to kind of let their eyes go in the direction of where we're pointing. And that's as best as we can do. That's all we can do.
Great stuff. Thank you, Denise.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Wow.
Okay, well, it's been a real joy. Thank you for coming to see us tonight on your Tuesday night off, or Tuesday